Good evening and welcome to the Board of Education's regular meeting. This meeting will be live streamed on the Oshkosh Media YouTube channel, www.youtube.com/c/Oshkosh Media. Are we in compliance with open meeting law notification?
Yes, we are.
All right, thank you. Please call the roll.
Peschel.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
Lyman.
Here.
Carlin.
Here.
Herzog. Carnes.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next up is Pledge of Allegiance. Dr. Davis, can you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next we are at the approval of the agenda. This is the point of where we have an opportunity to modify elements on the agenda to maybe work with the flow of what's going on in the room, or if we want to change or remove something for a different consideration. So I have one suggestion, and that suggestion is to move number 9 in the consent agenda to individually considered resolutions.
Yes, so moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Please call the roll on the removal of number 9 to
Select.
individual.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Lyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I forgot, was there any discussion on that? No, I didn't think there would be. Is there any other changes, items that anyone would wish to do this evening? All right. Seeing no more, we've made that change, we've approved that change, so we will move on to the board administration reports. First up is mine. We have no retirements on this agenda, so I won't be speaking to any of those. And I just wanted to just take a brief moment to talk about, as the president of the school board, I have the opportunity to serve on the Oshkosh Public Museum Board. I typically don't have the time for it. The time that the meetings aren't the best for me, and so Dr. Herzog has been going as well. But at this time, this last meeting, she couldn't attend, and so I actually had the opportunity to go. The elements of the meeting were basically conversations around updating the bylaws of the Oshkosh Public Museum, and then talking about the idea of how to better control financial donations that come to that with the intention of coming to the museum, what strategies they might utilize for that. And so that was essentially the whole meeting. For me, the bylaw geek in me comes out, and I get to have a lot of fun talking about, that stuff. And it was lots of fun for me. And then it was just really good meeting, and good to see the board taking the time to update some of those organizational documents that sometimes, like, we go over them every year. Pretty much we go through them, and then on a good cycle. I don't think these had been touched for decades, so it was really good. So that's my report. Nothing else to add. So next up is Superintendents Report. Dr. Davis.
Yes, thank you. To start with, Oshkosh is home to some of the most amazing small businesses and parents. The owners of Pizza at Highway 44, who also have children in the district, donated 48 cheese pizzas for the end of the year celebration at Reed Elementary School. Students love the pizzas, and the Reed community is so thankful to have such amazing parents that support the school. So thank you so much for that donation. Before the end of the year, 6th graders at Merrill Middle School tackled a science project to make the tallest tower they could with the smallest base. Then they enjoyed their end of the year field trip at Revs for some bowling. So sounds like fun was had all around. So congratulations to all those students finishing out the year strong. Members of the Oshkosh West forensic team recently participated in the National Speech and Debate Tournament in Louisville. Laura Funnel placed 81st in humorous interpretation, and Addie Peck and Angelina Vu placed 88th in duo interpretation, placing them in the top third of the country for the National Speech and Debate Tournament. So, way to go, Wildcats, and congratulations, ladies. Our Adaptive Sports League wrapped up its first year, providing the high school students who received special education services with an incredible opportunity to experience a variety of sports and activities. 17 students from Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West earned their varsity letter by attending at least 22 of the 24 opportunities presented. These students embraced the opportunity to explore their athletic talents while fulfilling their academic obligations. Congratulations and great job to everyone involved. We hope to see all of you and our community members at our official ribbon cutting for the district's new Brewing Futures Mobile Cafe. The public event is happening next Tuesday, June 28th at 1 o'clock in our parking lot here at the District Administration Office. All are invited to join us in celebrating this unique initiative and the awesome students who will be learning and serving our community. Named Brewing Futures Mobile Cafe, Coaching Ability for Employment, the customized and fully accessible food truck will be operated by students receiving special education services. This unique mobile classroom will not only provide students with special needs real-life working opportunities, but it will also allow them to engage with the community in a meaningful way and showcase their employability skills. You can follow the truck on Facebook and Instagram to see where it's going to be appearing in our community throughout this summer. So congratulations to everyone involved in that great opportunity. And then finally, just a glance at some of the work that I've been attending over the last couple of weeks. And that concludes the Superintendent's Good News Report for tonight.
Thank you. Next up, we have District Administrator Supplemental Reports, annual charter school reports from Alps and Shapiro STEM Academy.
Before we get to that, we have the board listening session.
I'm sorry.
Report from June 8th.
Go for it.
So Dr. Gunlock will help us with that.
Good evening, everybody. We had one individual attend our listening session on June 8th. They had expressed a concern that we are not moving forward quickly enough with race relations. They are concerned that black and brown kids are treated differently in schools, and they're wanted to be proactive in coming up with some solutions. They suggested some community building activities such as festivals for ethnic groups. Thought we should focus efforts to allow kids to, quote, be who they are, and concerned that we don't have a community identity that brings people in. Obviously, some of these extend well beyond the school system, but they were very interested in being a proactive part of a solution. So that was the one person we had at listening session.
Wonderful. Any questions? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, back to number 3, District Administrator Supplemental Reports. The annual report for charter schools for Alps and Shapiro STEM Academy. Good evening.
Good evening. So for both our charter schools, accountability comes underneath my umbrella or my roles and responsibilities. You can see both reports along with the charters that are included in there. Both charters met goals, and I was pretty impressed with their results as they came in there. The big thing to note is that with Shapiro STEM Academy, we now have Principal BSAC on board, and so for the 22-23 school year, the Shapiro STEM Academy Governance Council, in partnership with the new principal, which we now know as Mrs. BSAC, will bring a proposal forward to dissolve the charter, but not dissolve the great work that they're currently doing at the STEM Academy. And so they're going to be continuing working on that and bringing a proposal forward of how to proceed with Shapiro STEM Academy.
All right. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
All right, next is number 4. It's other reports. Before everyone gives their reports, I guess I just want to give some guidance in regards to the Education and the Policy and Governance Committee. The resolution that we pulled, number 9, There are, part of your reports relate to that, so I would ask for you to hold, you can still give reports, but I would just hold back your comments related to that item, so that if you want to bring them and express them when we're discussing that resolution, that might seem like a more appropriate time to do that. So with that, let's go ahead, if there's anything related to education.
Yeah. So we met on Thursday, June 2nd. And so the other item that came up was a follow-up from the board workshop on equity. Having Dr. Davis and Kim Brown had followed up with a few people from the former committee, or had talked to as well, come to the listening sessions. And one of the ideas is they wanted to bring that committee that we had previously back. And what that would mean would be the committee would be a size of 5 to 7 people to maximize flexibility. And the committee makeup should include a variety of diverse backgrounds. As research and actions are important, the structure of this committee would be similar to that of the Facility Advisory Committee, an administrative ad hoc committee. Items and ideas generated from this committee will then move to board committees depending upon what actions are. And then topics will then be sent appropriately and then work their way through that way so that we can have a better grasp on how we tackle the items that are important and the ones that we need to. So other than that, that's it.
Okay.
We meet again August 4th.
All right. Mr. Wright, you're doing the Facilities and Finance report today?
Yes, I am. Facilities and Finance Committee met on Thursday, June 16th. First on the agenda, we discussed secured entries that were included within the referendum. And those remaining secure entries to be finished will be going out to bid. And we're hopeful to get more bidders this time around so that those projects can be completed. The second thing we discussed was we got an update on 4K sites in the long-range plan, and there's discussion occurring to centralize some of our 4K classes at Shapiro STEM Academy potentially down the road, and that's just being looked into. Next, we talked about Emmeline Cook Elementary electrical panels because currently it's on the front of the school, and we think that there is an option to safely and effectively move that to the side of the school, which we thought would be a good idea. Next, we discussed West High School electrical project bids, and basically that would be bringing the electrical stuff at West in line with where it needs to be. Next, we talked about Sheldon Nature Area, and unfortunately there's been some trees that are going to need to be removed from the Sheldon Nature Area due to green ash borer, and that provided a way for the district to collaborate with Oakwood and other partners in that area so that we could come up with a good plan to make the trees and the environment healthier and to have the school community be a part of it. And then we talked about the budget variance, and this is good news as well. Currently, we're trending on a $4 million end-of-year surplus, according to the finance director, Neons. So that's it for facilities and finance.
Wonderful. Thank you. Next up is Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Peschel. Legislative Committee met on Friday, June 10th. And it's interesting because I have a very short report because we moved our meeting. It's normally on Thursday mornings, but we moved it to a Friday to accommodate the CISA 6 legislative breakfast that was scheduled on Thursday. However, that was canceled. So I do not have an update on the CISA 6 legislative breakfast, but we did meet and talk about our current objectives of the committee, which are to focus on budget items as top priorities for the upcoming year, including special education funding, revenue limit increases, and voucher accountability. We also talked about meeting with our legislative representatives, and we decided that when we meet with our representatives, it would be a good idea to include Dr. Davis in our meetings as well. And our next meeting is on August 11th. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And finally, the Policy and Governance Committee.
That would be me as well. Policy and Governance met on Tuesday, June 14th. First on the agenda, we discussed co-curricular handbook update with the athletic directors. And they have proposed, basically if kids are eligible to play sports or not, they need to be getting certain grades. And when some kids were getting lower grades, and they didn't feel they had a hope or chance to get that grade up to participate in sports, they would basically kind of quit. So basically there'll be some discretion on if kids are showing substantial progress in their academics, that then those kids can once again then participate in sports, because we don't want to lose kids throughout the whole, totally, if there's a way we can change the system a little bit. So that was the first thing we discussed. We got an employee handbook additional update. Just self-reporting needs to be done within 3 days instead of 5 days. Administrative guideline for job-related expenses we discussed, and we were going to change the overnight stay area to 45 miles instead of 60, because sometimes we have staff going to large events, and it just makes more sense to keep them there overnight than to have them shuttle back and forth. I'm going to skip 4 because we're going to discuss that. And then co-curriculum development, there was a new state law passed, Wisconsin Act 30, that required instruction regarding the Holocaust and other genocides at least once between grades 5 through 8 and once in grades 9 to 12. And to comply with state policy, we recommended the board approve that. Human growth and development, we had a lot of discussion on that, and we tabled some of that to come back. We tabled part of that to come back to committee because we wanted DPI to define more of what they were asking for, and we think that clarification will come. But Wisconsin Act 90 does require human growth and development instruction regarding the right to drop off a newborn child, the various healthcare locations. That might come back later. Open enrollment, the superintendent will have the power with that policy to decide if a kid can be open enrolled into our district or not. We felt that he should be able to do that. Personal communication devices, there was just some language updates there. District-owned personal communication devices, a technical correction to add school officials to the language, district-issued staff email account. The update deletes language by submitting form 7440.03. On-site access to technology resources from personal-owned communication devices. The policy was revised to include a reference to definition for personal communication devices outlined in policy 0100. Attendance, some kids work as election officials, so we updated that policy to reflect how it should be stated if they're absent to do that. Missing and absent children, the policy was revised to define the terms for use for missing and absent. The revisions are intended to clarify that the purpose of the policy is not to facilitate student enrollment, but rather to facilitate the school's assistance in child welfare in the event that missing or absent child arrives at a school facility. Bullying, the revision to this policy modifies current language to involve legal counsel in the event a complaint involves the superintendent or a member of the board. Control of casual contact communicable diseases. Certain members are designated to contact the child's parents / guardians in the local health department. The purpose of these revisions is to differentiate between the obligation to comply with health department directives in an outbreak linked to a facility, an update on suicide prevention. Technical correction was made in adding the word prevention. Notice of meetings. Revision of the policy reflect new statutory language on how meetings of the board or non-board committees that require public notice may be posted. Electoral process pursuant to the statutory change 120.066B 3M. This policy was revised to meet new school board election notice requirements. And then board member behavioral conduct. We basically, it was revising the policy that the expectation is for all board members to attend all board meetings that they can and committee meetings. And then officers, updates to this policy specify the process by which board officers are selected by majority vote of those members present and participating in such action. So that was really long. We went through a lot of stuff, and hopefully that all made sense. But that is the policy report.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Any questions related? No? Okay. Next up, we have non-agenda related public forum. I don't know that we have, no one
None.
signed up. So, all right. I will just kind of advise the board and the public that we have moved back to a 3-minute time frame for public comments. So, and that would have began today if the public were here to make any comments. So, and we have none for agenda related either. All right, thank you. So moving on is, we will move to the consent agenda. I will look for a motion after reading this brief statement. For the consent agenda, the board has been furnished with background material for each item and has discussed it at a previous meeting or in committee. These will be acted upon with one vote without discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Salaji, seconded by Carnes. Please call the roll.
Wright,
Aye.
Wyman,
Aye.
Carlin,
Aye.
Carnes,
Aye.
Peschel,
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, give me 1 second here. So, we are moving on to individual resolutions. We approved a motion to move number 9 to individual resolutions, and so I would entertain a motion to move it to the floor.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Carlin, seconded by Wright. We are open for discussion. If you ladies would like to come, take a seat. So, I originally asked for this to be removed because we're operating a little bit differently than how we have in the past. In the past, this area has been fully led by the superintendent down through the team, through the cabinet and such, and so that have always had your goals that you shoot towards and everything. And this is different in regards to now the policy now has the goals that we set, that we're shooting for in a certain time period. And what that means is that it's more set in stone of what the expectation is now. And because it's being built that way, it'll also go through a rigorous process of being updated and reviewed by us more. It's always being reviewed by your team, right? So, but it'll come back to us more in a more natural form. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge that the outcome of this has been discussions related to that the board has been having with Dr. Davis, and discussions that Dr. Davis has been having with his team. And this is kind of that notion of collaboration, of how we're all working together to be on the same page, have the same strategic goals, and putting the growth of students first in our district. So So with that, I think I'm gonna hand it off to Dr. Davis to kind of lead the discussion. Board, you're welcome to chime in, you know, when it's time, we know when they've given us their presentation, you guys have questions. So,
Didn't we
Yeah.
have this presentation?
say,
Didn't we have this presentation?
we have this, so thank you for that. I have to clarify more. Yes, we have all of this information and everything, but the community does not. And so I pulled it for the intention that there'd be a greater conversation or even just a presentation of this information in this process so that the public can be aware of it going on. And so, and I think that's really important too, because we all sit up here and say that we're going to do this. And I think this is really one of those things where we're taking some large steps as a board and as administration of working together and making it happen that way. And I think there's also an equity conversation that's in this as well, correct? So,
Yes, correct. So what you'll see, as we've talked about in multiple committee settings, is to be able to, you know, put some targets to our goals around literacy. We know that that's been an important topic for us to focus on. We've been doing a lot of improvement in that area, but we want to make sure that we have a scoreboard that is continual from the boardroom down to the classroom, that we can communicate that. Putting that in policy is helpful for us. And so what I asked tonight is for Julie and Kim just to provide an opportunity for to let the community know and the board know for any further discussion related to the assessments that we're looking at for literacy, and really just a quick overview on how we got to those targets and what we're looking at as we're moving forward. So.
Right, so in policy 2131.01, we are clarifying and being very clear that when we are looking at how we are progressing and where our success is, we're going to be using 3 measures. So for grades K through 2, that will be PALS, the Phonological Awareness Literacy Screener. We have goals set around iReady Reading Diagnostic, and that's for grades 3 through 8. And also the Wisconsin Forward Exam, ELA, grades 3 through 8, and that is our required state assessment. And we also talked about, both at the Education Committee meeting, at the Policy and Governance meeting, that by putting this into policy and putting the goals into place, we are really going to be concentrating on level 2 and level 3. This all tracks back to our strategic plan, and which is goal 1, ensuring all students are college, career, and community ready. So within those goals that we have set, we are proposing that by 2025, we have 75% of our K-2 students will meet spring level, grade level benchmarks. By 2025, 45% of students in grades 3 through 8 will be proficient or advanced in ELA on the Forward Exam, and I will talk more about how we got those numbers. And by 2025, 60% of students in grades 3 through 8 will be proficient or advanced, or in other words, at or above grade level when it comes to reading. So when we talked about each of these measures, we took a look at our data in the Oshkosh Area School District, not the state average, not other surrounding communities, but our students and our data. And we looked at the trends. Before COVID and before we put strategies improvements into place for our school district, what did our growth look like, and what did our attainment or our trends look like? So up here in this chart that was also in your packet, we looked at where we were from 2016 to 2019, and then took into account what has happened since COVID and the gaps in learning. And then had to say, where are we going to go from here, knowing that we're in a different spot than we were prior to COVID because of the learning loss or the gaps. So with that, we did a proficiency trend, and we have a predicted trend here, and we were saying when you set a SMART goal, specific, we're being specific, measurable, and attainable. We're feeling that this is attainable because it's based off of where we were in trends, and knowing that we're going to have to accelerate our growth to meet the goals that have been set by the board in our community, right? That we want students ready for the next grade level in each of those measures. So this is where 75% of our students K through 2 will be at benchmark in 2025. Then we looked at our trends in Wisconsin Forward Exam on the ELA, and up here this is a graph that was presented to the board this past, I believe, November, when we did our annual report, and you can see our gap with COVID and then where we are currently. So you can see where we were trending, and now how do we level set from here? So to do the predicted trends in ELA proficiency, once again, this is not about the state of Wisconsin or other surrounding communities. This is about our students, our children here in our school district. So we did a scale score analysis on Wisconsin Forward with our students, and you can see the years that were looked at for grades 3 through 8. And we applied a formula to figure out what is the typical gain in scale score. So before we put these improvements into place, before COVID, et cetera, how were we progressing? And so we came up with a scale score gain of 15. We know that a scale score gain of 15 each year is not going to get us. That's what was happening with our prior curriculum, our prior resources, our prior strategies. We know we're making changes to that. So where are we going to go from here? So then we did this with cohort data, and that means looking at the same students like over time and over those same school years to see how they were going, and that 15 scale score held across the cohorts as well. So from there we said, okay, so then how what do we need to do? If we were making typical gains like we were before COVID, and we know that we need to accelerate this and we've made some significant changes, what is this going to look like and where do we need to go with our numbers? So a typical scale score increase was applied to our current grade 4 scores. So in other words, the current 4th graders took the Wisconsin Forward as 3rd graders, and if they make a typical gain, what is their test scores going to look like this school year? And so you can see where the typical growth would be and what our percentages would be. And that's not where we want to be as a school district. We're going to have slid back in the percent of students that are proficient in advance. And that means that if we kept doing what we were doing, this is what we would predict where we would be. We've made changes. There have been resources that have been added. Our teachers are working incredibly hard in their learning and pushing the learning of their students. So we said, what would this look like if we went for stretch growth? In other words, we doubled our gain. And so you can see we would make some significant progress in the percent of students that were proficient in advance. So what we're predicting here is that if a stretch increase is observed, we need to be 5 to 6% of students gaining proficient or advanced status or level would need to be seen. So from there, this is what our data would be predicted to look like if we actually saw that gain. So it came up in the Policy and Governance and in the Education Committee meeting that 45% seems pretty low. And and we looked at our surrounding, this is a case where we did look at our surrounding districts, how are they doing? Because keep in mind that with the Forward exam, the average percent of students in the state that were proficient in advance is at 33. So this is really an attainment or a benchmark piece. The benchmark or the level that is set in the Forward exam is pretty high. Can we stretch our students? Can we do better? Absolutely, and that's our goal. So knowing what's attainable, this is what we are predicting for our stretch growth and where 45% came from. From there, we looked at Spring iReady. iReady is a diagnostic tool, and it's nationally normed, but every district is not required to provide it. And so that's when we did look to other districts about what is their typical gain, what was our typical gain within the school district, and we believe that we can make the growth to 60% of our students in grades 3 through 8 would be reading at or above grade level by 2025 when we looked at the comparison scores that way. And then we had some other comparisons within the piece here. But that was a really quick version of this. So questions or things that we can help with?
No.
Part of the question that came up before is how does equity play into this? So as we look at this, again, these are our 30,000-foot district system level indicators. As we drill down at the building levels, we do look at disaggregated data, looking at either socioeconomic status, ethnicity or race, looking at just a variety of different factors, and really zero in to see if we see any patterns, any gaps and then work with our principals and our teachers to be able to address those gaps. So a lot of that work is done at the building level, and is done on a continuous basis. So there's continually, just check in some what we call formative assessments throughout the year to make sure that we can see how students are doing. So it's not like we wait until the end of the year, get the forward test, and be like, oh yeah, we should have this student. We're having those students observed and assessed on a regular basis by their teachers, and be able to provide those interventions as on the fly, ideally. So again, this is the system level data, so I wanted to provide that for you. One of the things that we'll look at as far as our board reporting process in our work plan, and I'll propose a draft of in August, as we would look at when during the year does it make sense to look at this data. So, and my proposal will be, we look at this on an annual basis, because again, it's system level data. Again, knowing that we're looking under the hood, if you will, on a constant basis. We've got continuous improvement processes set, we've got interventions set, for students to support. But we believe, my question was, with all of the great work that has been done over this year, and to be able to put us on a different path and a better path for literacy, what results can I expect to see out of the system over the next 3 years? And so that was the question that I put to Julie and Kim and our staff, and this is what they responded with. So I think the accountability is really important. I think to be able to get this into a policy standpoint, what that allows us to do is be able to work with our directors and with our teachers to be able to say, this is not only Julie's idea or Brian's idea, this is board policy, this is the expectation, here's the target, we're here to support you, we're here to work through this together, and we'll, through our continuous improvement processes, we'll be constantly monitoring this. So, as we overachieve on these marks, then we'll set new marks as we move forward. If we fall short of these marks, then we'll learn from that and be able to set new marks. So it'll be a continuous process, but we think that, again, these are aggressive measures to be able to strive for, but also things that we think are attainable. So with that, any questions or comments? I know we've been in a couple different committee structures to be able to present this.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I know at the education committee, when we talked about this, we talked about like a plus or minus 2%.
Yes.
So that's still kind of an understanding we all have. We're just not wording it that way in policies. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and that was part of the review in policy and governance then going back, was that let's set a specific number for a target as far as these goals, with the understanding that, in statistics, there's variances similar to voting. You'd have a plus or minus 3, if you will, on any, voting forecasting or anything like that. So, so we'll have that understanding, and again, as we do our reporting, we'll make sure that that's within the context of that.
Yeah.
So.
That topic did come up at the Policy and Governance Committee, and I did some checking afterward, because I know in Education Committee there were ranges set, and in talking with Ted Knightsky of CISA 6, and a friend who is deeply immersed in and knows a lot about education statistics, the recommendation was you go with a single number. And if you remember when you reviewed the charter schools for tonight, they have a single number. It's not a range.
So that's standard across.
That's typically the way those are done.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
I was also just going to say thank you for this. I know as a teacher, I was accountable for these percentages in my classroom, and I think that's common across the nation to start the accountability in the individual classrooms, which I know we're going to look at. But I think it's really admirable that here we started the accountability at the top with the superintendent and putting it in board policy. Like I said, I know teachers will look at that individual data per student, but it says a lot that it, the accountability is at the top of the district leadership level. So thank you.
Mr. Wright?
In the policy committee, we also talked about the importance of having these benchmarks etched in policy, so that, if the board changes or whatever changes, because things can change, that the district as a whole is still striving to achieve standards, literacy standards that are etched in policy. So it's something that we're accountable for now, and the administration is accountable for, continually moving forward, I guess. So just want to add that.
Mr. Kearns?
I've said this, I think, at education and talking about it, but then I think the next steps then empowers you and, to be able to bring to us the resources that you need then to hit those numbers, right? That this is what we are telling you we need to hit, then you come back to us and say, well, this is what we need to do. If that's investing in more staff, if that's, whatever that is, then I'm excited to see the next part of that then, to see how we do that. So, but thank you to all of you for putting that together.
Go ahead.
May I add one thing? The other item that was added in the policy was a commitment to growth. And we decided that depending on where each child starts, because behind every single one of these numbers is a child, right? And so depending on where that child is and how they need to stretch, every single child needs to grow. So you'll also notice in there a commitment statement to growth, because we are not going to hit the attainment numbers if every single child is not growing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there any discussion among the board related to this item? All right, seeing none, please call the roll.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
All right, next up is a request for future agenda items. Does anyone have any requests? Seeing none, any announcements? All right, then I will read this wording to ask for an adjourn to executive session, and I'll seek a motion.
I move to waive the reading.
All right, there's been a motion to waive the reading. Need a second?
Second.
All right, moved by Carnes, seconded by Wyman to waive the reading of adjournment to executive session. So I need a motion to adjourn to executive session.
No, you need a vote.
We have to vote on that. and then-
Sorry, I meant a vote. Please call the roll.
Carlin.
Nay.
I'm so sorry to hear you.
Nay.
Nay. Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Peschel.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. We are in executive session.
Nope.
Nope.
I will make a motion
Now you
to
have to
go
make a
to
motion.
executive session.